We don't leave anyone cliffhanging too much in suspense. Basically, when we bought this facility, it was wrecked out, vacant, deteriorated, and the state had falsely told us it had been closed in 2015. And the site was hiding concealed missile componentry, dedicated flight sensor componentry, files that looked related to the base. It was hiding work activity, and there was work activity continuing in the community, including transiting through a local bar. We've even had counsel for an aerospace contractor out of state confirm aspects of componentry for both commercial and military aviation moving into the community. Even the year after we bought the facility, documentation shows they were always using our address as if our site still did the things it used to do when it closed in 2015. That's the high level summary, and I was threatened every which way you could imagine for attempting to report this, initially being instructed by the state in my reporting. Then they worked to execute a very coordinated cover-up of the seriousness of the crimes, and some of them fall under terrorism laws. Some of them fall under very serious commercial aviation laws. Other things were just simple theft and witness tampering, kind of your basic intimidation tactics. But it was an absolute mess. Constant stalking, constant hacking. And then we discovered a trove of public records that have been authenticated that showed numerous state and federal officials coordinating the activities at this site when the records at the site said the work they did was off the books. Why does that matter? It matters because basically, whether intentionally or unintentionally, a group of officials tried to transfer those crimes to us because they can continue with the property owner.
You did due diligence. You found this stuff and you went, what the heck? And you tried to talk to people, and the blowback on you.
Sitting in a room right now that was so rotted out when we bought the facility that we had to tear out to the exterior siding and rip everything from within the room. 30,000 square feet of this facility had to be completely rebuilt from the inside out because it was rotted beyond use. I was told this site during my diligence phase was shuttered. Things were so well concealed within the building, it took us 5 months to start finding the things which forced a partial closure of the facility for another 9 months. And there were agents, both head agent with North Dakota BCI, Craig Zachmeyer, as well as agent Richard Gene Brown with OSI at the base, as well as the now incarcerated and on trial for murder agent Daniel Brejo from HSI, who also coordinated part-time with BCI's Drug Task Force and part-time with BASE. Those agents visited my site, and I then began experiencing all kinds of harassment, stalks, threats. In different ways, they made false reports or misrepresented statements to other federal agencies, seeking to undercut my ability to clean the site. And North Dakota Commerce was liaising with Craig Zachmeyer. So it became a mess in a hurry, and we'll share some evidence of that today. There are some other media partners that we're working with to launch more of it very soon. But and I'm doing everything in step with legislators. We've given the state 2 years to come clean and fix the mess. And instead, they've tried to hang it on us. So we're going to share the mess and let the public decide.
Senator.
Originally thought, my goodness, it can't be as bad as what Charles thinks. But after time, I could find no other conclusion but that it was very serious. For example, I caught Commerce lying to me multiple times and trying to lead me down a path that just was not true. And they would try to reframe it time after time in a different way to get me to trust them over him. But I have never caught Charles lying to me. And I have the other side. And that's part of just testing the waters to see where the truth lies. And it became very clear that there's some type of a cover-up. And
Senator Weston, if I can, you have seen evidence, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Troves, lots of evidence. You have seen actual componentry.
Yes.
You have seen records of the Department of Commerce dictating my cleanup and investigations.
Yes, I absolutely have. Like an email asking him to backdate a mortgage, which is illegal.
Oh, sorry, those would be the steps after, but I'm saying you've seen evidence that the CEO of the development fund who lent to us was actually helping direct the cleanup of the operation, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then after that, once they discovered we found out they were involved, then they started retaliating. And you've seen them try to force me to backdate my property to the state almost 2 years, correct?
That is correct.
And you've seen them try to force me through the Attorney General to sign a statewide non-disclosure agreement that would hush me up on this.
That is correct.
Okay. We're not just a fly-by-night group. I mean, I think for those that are listening, maybe to mention here, my father started companies such as Dutchman RV, Four Winds Motorhomes, which is Thor Motor Coach,
Yes.
Dutch Housing. All three of those companies are or were US #1 brands. And I designed the world's first carbon fiber RV and lead in new RV technologies, which this Dunseith plant at 100,000 square feet is our starter site. We have the potential to need to build 4 or 5 more of these within the next 10 years here in the region, and could easily employ 200 jobs within 4 years at minimum. Will be the highest paying manufacturing employer in this region. There's only a few anyway that are even around. And the state has literally been trying to sabotage all of that just to conceal its crimes, which we'll talk about in a moment.
This is the CR1 Carbon, and we are very excited to be able to show you the world's first all-carbon fiber RV. Nice. What we have right here is an RV that is built without screws, without fasteners, and it is about half the weight of things that stand in the conventional industry. The 35-foot RV typically would weigh in the 10 to 11,000 pound range and is being comfortably towed with an SUV. The net effect of this is that we should be able to increase MPG by up to 100 to 150% while towing. In addition to that, the structure of this unit is on an order of magnitude stronger than any RV that has ever existed before it. So we've been able to take the weight out, and by pursuing the carbon fiber technologies, we've been able to pump so much more back into the product. It's the first of its kind in North America.
The build there, we'll call that Generation 1. Craig Zachmeyer will answer it for me.
And that's the one that wants to come up and see if there's any other documents related to Chiptronics for the tax violations and the laundering of money.
Okay, what about the documents that you took that were from Chiptronics to Benchmark, those invoices that I thought were fake?
Yep, IRS has all those.
Okay, those are real invoices for GG1320 flight sensors.
Yeah.
Those are Honeywell flight sensors that go in military and commercial jets.
I showed them the Honeywell stuff. But
What's that?
I showed them the Honeywell stuff.
Well, to Kent, we were both going to that meeting, and it was when they found out I was going to be there that they canceled the meeting.
Because they knew you'd be able to refute whatever they were going to attempt to spin to Senator Weston, would be my guess.
And how many times, Senator Weston, have they tried to spin stuff?
Oh, man. Over and over and over again. They tried to talk about him misusing funds. That's why they can't get behind him. But I would go, well, no, that's not true. And then they'd come at it a different angle. Well, no, that's not true. You directed them that way. Just recently, there were like 3 or 4 different things that they tried to say that he did wrong. I said, well, you directed him, and Charles has proof of it on recordings. And wouldn't you know it, the next 2 days later, they were erased in his phone. Fortunately, he has backup.
Thank you, God, for that.
2 company devices got hacked last month, the day and a half after Senator Weston's meeting with the governor's chief of staff and roughly 5 commerce people, which they said was a secret meeting. And they tried to pry the senators away from me. And then I met with the governor's chief of staff 2 days after that. And he just asked, do you really have all the evidence? And we said, absolutely, and very well preserved. And we had multiple witnesses on the call, including witnesses from out of state who've been working with us to help in this in various ways and refinancing us, and who have said that if it weren't for the state's sabotage, we would have had investments locked in many times over. And we've had offers since the start of the year.
And I can verify that.
Situation.
Independent from Charles, he told me that absent from the state, they would have had deals multiple times over. And yet,
and those
they tell me, oh, they want Charles to succeed. Does that sound like they want Charles to succeed?
No. All I ever hear from North Dakota is we need business. We got to bring people in. We got to make North Dakota grow. We got to provide jobs, which is exactly what Charles is trying to do, which is exactly what he came here for, and which is exactly what they're attempting to stop, because there's corruption at the top. And it's not just federal. There's corruption at the top all the way through this state. And they've decided that they can take good people out and just keep going. And that's part of why we're doing this show, is because stuff like that, quite frankly, pisses me off. It's a danger to Charles, and what Charles has lived through for the last 2 years, nobody should need to live through, much less in the United States of America. But I was raised to believe better of the United States and better of North Dakota. And I'll tell you what, throughout this entire story, we are seeing anything but. And Charles, I just got to tell you, I apologize. I mean, I apologize. And the fact that the governor, the attorney general's office, and everybody else seems to be feeling that they have justification to ruin you, to ruin your company, and to screw with the people of the United States of America and North Dakota, doesn't even begin to discover the point of my emotions on this one.
From Hannah Lang, coordinating with Josh Teagan, Commissioner of Commerce, and Shaden Akison, Head of Investments. Hannah was part of the development fund and was underwriting us. Does the first message appear there?
It does. It says, it starts with, we think you act now, political repercussions will be minimal. You won't have as strong a case if you wait. You definitely want something on file now, even if you aren't actually pressing charges. You don't want to get in a situation where you don't want a situation where you need to refile TINs, etc. And you answer, okay, thank you, I feel the same way.
Yeah, that was then followed with a direct call with Shaden Akison and Josh Teagan. With the text messages, which would, and Shaden told me, I'm a lawyer, I can help you. I came into North Dakota having my loans structured by Dave Lehman, who's on almost 4 years of site records here, having been associated with the activities that we've now had to report as crimes. And I want to make very clear, I know in my reflection kit that the smile has left my face.
Absolutely.
And probably will for the rest of this. But I want to make very clear, I have no vendetta against anybody. I'm not reporting these things just because I must. I have 2 real fears. One is, I think there was an attempt to frame us. There is clearly, and we'll show some evidence of this, in the background of cleaning our site, the address itself was not cleaned and scrubbed in various ways in how it operates with government. And that's how this stuff was allowed to continue. It looks to us like the reason why the agents allowed the parts to continue to flow through taverns and housing after they knew that our site was discharged by the federal EDA to be repurposed as an RV facility. So the left hand of the government not talking to the right hand. We knew no better, but there was actually an attempt, according to the FAA, by a major aerospace contractor to claim that we were still operating in the aerospace supply chain.
Oh my
Therefore, God. All of the violations up to 2022 could theoretically be wiped out, and anything new would accrue to us as the property owner if we were responsible for these parts and then they were being made off. Theoretically would hold some sub-tier contractor responsibility, which is asinine because The last company that legally operated within that supply chain connected to this site was dissolved in the beginning of 2020. FAA's senior safety aviation inspector, who was part of a national security incident response team that came to our site, was in a complete panic. And at one point on the recordings, with the FBI and the CEO of the North Dakota Development Fund present, he asked us to cut the recordings. And then he told us, just so you know, this is the most sensitive electronic in our commercial aerospace. And he made it very clear that you can disrupt the flight path of a jet if the sensor goes wrong. And he could not believe that it was running through a tavern on parcels and confirmed by an attorney to an aviation company.
And literally, from what you described to me, it sounds like they were setting you up, unbeknownst to you, to be looked at as a shell company. So if crap hit the fan, you guys were going to go down for anything.
Fall guy. It's as simple as that. It was the convenient, and even if it wasn't the intent, because a lot of people, so Dave Lehman directly lied to us from Commerce when structuring our loans. He worked on this project both at NDSU and at Commerce. He told us the site was closed and scrubbed in 2015, and that couldn't have been further from the truth. He also told us things about another event that occurred here that were false. And he spoke to agents, and he told agents he thought it was a commercial project that ran here, and I was present to that conversation. And he did note that it was aerospace, but he thought it was commercial. And then a year later, when I confronted him after discovering the records, he said it was his first defense project. And, you know, what do you really know about the qualifications? There was a document found at the beginning of 2016 that said they weren't qualified, and they did it anyway. So, I mean, the site was shuttered. It had its machinery ripped out. It had its government NADCAP approved production lines ripped out. The north static control sensitive side of the site that was used for this really complex sensor manufacturing was turned into a machine shop, an armored vehicle shop, hardware storage, housing authority storage. I mean, they were using loading docks to do work, and we have a witness to that. So they just, it was a gravy train, and they were fixing problems. And they, you know, some people, truly, I do believe them that they didn't know better because they were being misled by people directly involved in the project. Other people, I'm not so sure. And whether anyone was skimming or anything like that off the top is just pure theory. I can't prove it, but I can prove that mixed in with the flight sensors were records of sales to China through the entire year of 2019.
Well, especially seeing as how it's sensitive materials, not just commercial, but military and everything else, and there's records to China. Somebody's making money somewhere, and somebody high up knows about it.
That, but it's ugly.
Nope, that's on me. That's on me.
Honeywell was penalized in 2021 for unauthorized exports of military tech to China, including tooling and electronic circuitry. There is an incident that happened at this site in 2019, which leads us to believe, and which has led a federal agent working with us to speculate that the government found out about this once before and tried to clean it up with a heavy hand. It might be why folks went quiet. And then it might be like why people like Dave Lehman haven't told us the truth. And then I think truly when Josh Teagan and Shaden Akison initially told us, you know, go for all this, get this thing cleaned up, you know, because we were starting to find componentry that the mere possession by a U.S. citizen could be a terrorism crime. We needed it off the property.
Yeah.
I mean, 18 USC 2332G is a minimum 25-year prison sentence, and it gives the state authority for possession or removal. The state could have stepped in, could have used the National Guard or some other cleared agency, and they could have stepped in and cleared the site, even if the base or FBI wouldn't, or HSI. So even if the others were threatening us, they could have done the right thing, but they didn't because their teams were responsible for why it was all there. Now, did they know that some locals were trying to keep the gravy train going after they sold the site to us? That part, I don't know. What I do know is that I was contacted by someone who did a public records request, who has records from Commerce continuing on this project after the records I found end. My records end in late 2019, and his records continued after that. So I know that Commerce is hiding more, and they deliberately showed me an empty database after 2015 when I asked about records while things were still on the site. So I was very misled by officials within commerce once they realized how implicated their agency was.
What's been happening when you've been asking for things?
Well, they talk nice to me, and they say nice things, and they say they're for Charles, but their actions prove otherwise, and it's consistent. I've tried to get meetings with the governor for a year. I've tried to get meetings with the attorney general, like I told you before.
Yep.
And it's not happening. And every time I get a meeting with Commerce, it's the same story told a different way about how he misused funds, but they're for him. And then when I give them proof that no, you guys directed him to do the very things you're accusing him of, they try to twist it a little different way. It's
Go ahead.
Frustrating.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, to be very clear, this was a project that was going to set up with close to $5 million. About $1.5 million was spent when we had to start closing the site. And then be something that should have taken less than a week to clean. And the first agent from the base tried to take our keys on site and told us your site wasn't scrubbed. Military will take over. We'll give it back to you in less than a week. That should have been the end of this. I should have never known anything after that. The other liability, I mentioned there were two things that concern me, is there's a huge spillover into commercial aviation with this sensor.
Correct.
At risk of 18 USC Title 38 and potentially 18 USC Title 34, which allows the government to pursue death penalty in the event of death in aviation. Those violations related to Title 38 appear to be very significant off of what we discovered, and they have compelled national security reviews from FAA. So I think that the full extent of this is not being revealed to the public in any way, because there's another scandal that happened a year ago called AOG Technics, where they've already pressed charges against a guy in the UK for doing basically paperwork counterfeiting of engine bolts. Whereas what this is flight sensors, where the paperwork literally says in some transactions not to record it on an audit ledger. And where the work was done on coffee-stained lined paper,
Jeez.
much of it's then destroyed. And where transactions showed miscellaneous item coding being used to transfer from out of state the parts into North Dakota and Dunseith. So we're talking very, very serious masking. Some agents have told me that the thousands of records and dozens of boxes of evidence that came off our site is all that exists of this scheme, that it's been concealed at other contractor sites around the country where they've tried to investigate. So, we found a paper trail that outlines a large chunk of the scheme. And in terms of the uniqueness of an aviation whistleblower, there's two things. One, other whistleblowers have, alleged flight safety, and then they've been kind of countered by the industry and by the FAA, where they say, oh, we looked into this, yeah, it was a violation, but it's not really affecting the safety of our jets. The government has a huge clear sky turbulence problem right now. And the sensor that we're reporting on is a ring laser gyro inertial reference sensor, which controls inertial reactions in jets. And a Honeywell engineer said that if this sensor fails in a 3-axis unit, it can cause an immediate problem in flight. So I'm not going to draw a cause or correlation. I'm merely going to say we've made extensive reports to the FAA that has compelled a team of 4 people to be assigned to work with us. And then they appeared as eager to disconnect the situation as they possibly could. And as we discovered more evidence and more witnesses, they did not follow up with those witnesses, the FAA.
You've uncovered a bunch of stuff that affects public because of public transportation with commercial airlines. You've discovered military issues. You've discovered parts
and
being. Why wouldn't they be?
Why that FAA thing matters a lot. At some point, an attorney who told me he represented Honeywell 2.5 months after he tried to convince me to throw away the evidence he was engaged to us and then refunded us with a conflict of interest, and he was a very prominent national attorney. He told me that the problem is too big to address, but he said in 5 years the government will address it. So this was a year and a half ago, so he figured 3.5 years. He said that they will come down on this, and they will come down on the people involved, and they will try to hang it on you. So he said, I'm withdrawing, but he said, you know everything that you found now, so you have to report and you have to continue. And then within a few months of that, there was a prominent aerospace contractor who tried to tell the FAA that I worked for them. So, you know, the level of conspiracy inside the industry to try and keep this quiet, well, then they changed their allegation from denying it to admitting it. They admitted they were sending the stuff back. They admitted they lost control of the address through a contractor. We have that on record. And then the frame of it, which the FAA tried to buy into, is that, oh, it was just a metal part. There was no circuitry. Well, then we found circuitry. Then we found record circuitry being worked on. And then the FAA went quiet and stopped communicating with us.
The thing that bothers me so much, and Senator Weston, I assume it probably bothers you, is this is critical stuff, not just because of government secrets and everything else, but because of the danger and the detriment that is potential to the public. And in my world, if something like this had come out, government should be there to help you, to try to address the situation and see what you can get fixed. And we're seeing the exact opposite. We're seeing nothing but hindrance. And it's not just at the federal level. We're seeing it all the way to the top in the North Dakota level. And that's what makes me go, why?
They run into a complicated problem because if they want to invoke some national security restriction, which, I mean, I've been talking with legal counsel for so long, if they had wanted to, they would have pulled us aside 2 years ago and told us, hey, look, something happened. It's a mess. Keep quiet about it. Instead, they threatened us. Why did they threaten us? And why did they try to do it a different way? They tried to do it a different way because the DOJ has a standing policy that they cannot invoke national security restrictions to protect fraud.
How big is this that they would go to this level of deception? And we need to get to the bottom of those questions.
And Senator, why the circling of the wagons at the state level? You would think, I mean, I've gotten to the point in my life where I expect the federal government to do this stuff. But I expect my state to go, hold on there, let's fix this. And
right.
This is not what's happening. And you can probably tell from my voice, Senator, I'm peeved.
Well, me too. I understand that when there's power and money available, well, it corrupts a lot of people.
See, that's what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing with all of this, I'm looking at follow the money, follow the power, find the corruption. And this is why there's this huge scramble right now to, quite frankly, silence the messenger. Charles, I went past heartbroken a while ago. The amount of corruption that exists in this state is beyond. Okay, now, Charles, what can you tell us about that?
Most of these people had multi-year roles at the site after 2015 closure.
Oh dear.
So Dave Lehman, routinely named, Laura Willard, routinely named for Commerce. Scott Davis, he was the director of ND Indian Affairs, a cabinet member to Burgum. Lisa Gibbons is the state director for Kevin Kramer. She was routinely named in the records we obtained. Then Kristen Hammond for John Hoeven. I spelled her name wrong. It should be Kristen. And Bill Davis, who was the acting director for USDA.
These are all major players, Charles.
This group managed the site. They either managed, facilitated, or funded, or some combination of all of the above on a near monthly basis at meetings in the basement of a prominent bank between Bismarck and up in our region.
After this site was shut down, were the major players in our state government at meetings every month discussing this facility.
See, that's what frustrates me so much. I mean, and we've got major players here. We've got Kramer's name, we've got Hoven's name. I mean, and then we have people like the Attorney General running interference for them, and we're being ghosted by the governor's office.
Witness that says Hoeven personally visited the site. There's a record that says Hoeven's being pursued for defense circuitry to the site. There are records of routine reporting of the flight sensor work while the flight sensor work at the site is being recorded off ledger, let's say. So that is the mess there. I want to publicly, I could find on the sale of this sensor is almost 15 years old, and it was being sold for over $14,000 per unit.
Wow.
And there's records of more than 5,000 shipments of the sensor transiting the site, which could be subject to false claims. Then there's a missing invoice trace that suggests there could be 15 to 25,000 more shipments of that sensor.
That's a couple of pennies.
Then there's only 1,600 traceable serial numbers related to those
Oh my
sensors.
God.
So if the government can't figure out which other serial numbers were involved, then all the other sensors associated with those lots theoretically should be subject to false claims.
Wow. Senator
So
West,
do the math. It's a lot of money.
Senator Weston, can you think of any way that there's graceful deniability in this?
Well, I know that's probably the plan.
For the big guys.
Yeah, for the big guys. But I hope not. I mean, I want somebody to pick this up that can get after the money, like we talked about before. So there isn't any plausible deniability.
It's an audio. This is me and Agent Zachmeyer. I'm telling him I understand that legally they must have collected those parts and didn't. And then I go into some speculation about why, and you'll see him agree.
Hang on. He's going through the PowerPoints right now about the state's secrets continued.
Oh, sorry. This is document 4. This is an MP3.
Oh, got it.
Hang on.
I now understand that lawfully they had an obligation to take some of those components. They can't leave them with me, and they can't be sitting on my site. They have to go, and they have to be collected by federal authorities. And they have attempted to silence me. We had some people in D.C. that became very, very interested in everything that happened.
And I don't know, that.
Because it looks to us like the base, our speculation is the base may have had a close-up responsibility in 2015 that they goofed.
I guess that you're probably right.
And it looks like they goofed it really bad.
Can I?
So that is Agent Zachmeyer concurring with me that the site was supposed to be closed and wasn't. And that was 6 months after my stalking incidents began. I had another stalking incident 2 days after that call with Agent Zachmeyer. And I even had bank cards frozen. My phone stopped working. My email stopped working. I had logins from overseas. It was a mess for a number of months. We did get to some high ups in various DC channels, and it looks like either because the problem was too big for them to address. We have one on record saying it's the worst thing he's seen in 5 years. And he's very, very high up in the Biden administration. And he then asked us not to contact him anymore, and then levied a huge, huge tens of millions of dollar fine against a defense contractor after we were reporting to him. So he refused to help clean up the site after saying he would. And he even had his team ask us not to email another contact in their department after providing the report that they had asked for. And they told us they were keeping the information, and I quote, close hold and notifying certain persons. And this is a political appointee, very, very high up regulating aspects of military technology. Was recently fired. She was the CEO of the North Dakota Development Fund. She tried to help us. She repeatedly told us that our money would be frozen if we didn't do things a certain way. And then once we found the public record, she joined in with her other colleagues to try and get rid of us from the state. And then once the state found out we had all the records of her directing us, texts, emails, calls, etc., and others, then they separated with her.
Of course. Paul, can you do that?
Yeah, and by the way,
I mean, because there's just no
they-
way, you know. I mean, it's
the state said,
how
sorry.
you've come across it. There's no way that no one else did it, and you know. So I'm guessing that a lot of people either came across and walked away before anything more could come from it. But yeah, I'm not sure. But like I said, it takes a very strong person to go through what you're going through. And you know, like I said, it's not only you; it's also your family, and you know that plays a huge role in it. So,
Yep.
I don't know if I could have stood there as long as you are, and tried to look through this, especially with my family on the back end of it. So.
Yeah, last night was the 7th or 8th stalking incident, and my wife and daughter were in the car with me, and it was unnerving. Okay, that was in March. Go ahead, Senator Weston.
Board approves it. Board has no say over it, and it now falls back onto me. And I have every say of what we're doing and how we're moving forward. Now, the board still has right to question and want to know. And like I said, and I can share as much or as little with them as I would like. So that's where, you know, like I said, I've had conversations. Shaden is fully aware of what is going on and what's taking place. And, you know, I make sure, like, how much of this are we going to share? How much should we be sharing? And like I said, so we really shared what we feel is enough that they need to know. And like I said, so they are fully updated that, yes, you are behind, but it's completely okay from my perspective of where we're sitting at and how we're moving forward.
And then the next one is a picture of Jessica took. Photos of agents and others are scrubbed out. She's literally at the facility with a group of agents. 3 agents were there that day from the Department of Defense, including the General of the Defense Criminal Investigative Service, and another agent who was involved in the takedown of the DoD's Director of Education last year. And Took was helping collect evidence, helping the agents to catalog and document. They walked out with a trailer load of things that day.
My God.
And it was parts, CDs, burned CDs of missile data, all kinds of things that were found.
Really be going on, and that's when, like I said, that's when I came out. But as soon as that was, you know, I came back and said, hey guys, this legitimately is what's going on. It's never been a question of, you know, disbelief from there on.
I don't mean disbelief, but I mean, how many people will really have the courage to tell this story if they see someone gets an attempted murder or something for telling the story? I mean, the point being, like, you know, of all the people that have knowledge of this situation right now, the fact of the matter is the government is still doing a very good job at trying to limit the distribution of the awareness of the fact that parts that didn't have proper custody or proper work conditions might be sitting in civil aviation right now, potentially opening up to huge risks of wrongful death or civil action against airline industry on the basis of what we discovered.
I can completely understand that from that perspective, but, you know, like, just because, like I said, I mean, that would cause mass hysteria, you know, and there would be no choice but to shut down, and there would be no air travel by any means, you know, so, like, I get it from that aspect, but I just don't see how on the other, like, flip side of it, there's no way to quiet if someone were to all of a sudden disappear, that everyone else who knows about it is going to go, oh, okay, I'm just not going to say anything now.
Except they did that when the Texas guys left.
Yep.
So there was a group before us that left a bloody room behind and all of their personal possessions and most of their company assets. And we found out that most of it was laundered off to the tribe before we bought the site. And we discovered the room and other things, and we were told lies by people who had been involved in the site as to what the mess was we discovered and why it was what it was. And a year later, we found out that that was all false. So I'll stop there.
A bloody room on site, then they can explain that. I mean, peel back another layer from the onion, it's just more rotten.
Well, and you talked about
From
the
March to August, by the way, last year.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, Senator.
Go ahead,
Weston.
Senator.
we talked about the fall person. Jessica Took got fired, and she doesn't know why.
Well, see, that's what worries me so much.
Talked to her.
I met with her at the beginning of May,
Yeah.
and they promised me to fix the loans and move us forward. And then a couple days later, I get an email that says she's not working there anymore.
See, Senator, that's what worries me is we're going to sacrifice some of the lower level people. And then they're going to go, oh, it's all better. We fixed it. And nothing's going to have been done, Senator.
I agree. I that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to have that plausible deniability is their plan.
And they're going to set. They're going to try to hang as much of this on Charles as they possibly can.
Oh, for sure.
Which it'll get harder. But Senator Weston also knows that we have a witness who heard several heads of commerce, including Shaden Akison, say that they really want us to succeed. And this was this year, but they have to do what the Attorney General tells them. There's
corruption behind it. You haven't been able to open a door yet that's given you any relief. I mean, Senator Weston's here, but Senator, you've been trying the same thing, and every door you open, it's slammed or there's a blockade there.
Yeah.
I've had 3 collections.
Isn't it nice how this is just layer upon layer upon circle upon circle upon circle, and every door you open, there's corruption behind it. You haven't been able to open a door yet that's given you any relief. I mean, Senator Weston's here, but Senator, you've been trying the same thing, and every door you open, it's slammed or there's a blockade there.
Yeah.
I've had 3 collections. I've had the Department of Defense confirm a flight safety investigation into the military. I've had my site to the point where I could start operating last fall. And when I tried, a bank that tried to give me a mortgage to just sidestep commerce, they've never officially frozen my loans to me. They told Senator Weston and several other senators that they were freezing my loans. And they announced that they were auditing me because they were going to find some misuse. And so we waited when they delivered the audit. They delivered the audit the night before we were supposed to have the meeting with Drew Wrigley. So we knew what the premise was, and we just waited until they said it. And then they put it in writing that, yeah, we believe you misused your loan funds for remediating your property. And so then we knew, okay, this is what this is what they're targeting. Well, then I get a call from Michael Standard, the News Co-op reporter who was writing stuff last fall. And he tells me, I've got corroborated 3 ways from the AG, the governor, and the Commerce that you blackmailed and extorted the state. And he said, I can put that in a headline unless you cooperate with me more.
Wow.
Because he had already seen evidence. I was very hesitant to share the names of who was involved beyond the public records. I was very hesitant to share law enforcement recordings. And he told me, if you don't share it, this is the headline. So he then extorted stuff out of me, and instead of telling
Big Pharma hates when you do this, but they can't do a damn thing.
Then said, oh, it looks like, everything Commerce is trying to say appears false by Charles Records, but everyone just reads the headline.
Right.
And so then he told Senator Weston about 2 days before the article ran that he knows the state's lying. So I've got a low-hanging defamation case against him, but if I do that, how bad does it make me look if I'm suing the media? So it's like we get put in these terrible positions where we're trying to just move forward. And we have given the state so many times a gracious way out to just walk forward with us, stop hijacking and extorting our loans over trying to get us to clean the site up their way when they're associated with the crimes, admit some conflicts, and find a gracious way out so that other parties move us forward. Well, they told us they would start doing that after they called one of my lenders and asked if they would support a misuse allegation, and my lender said no. Then they said they would work with us, and then this spring, we had an almost $5.5 million cash offer, and they joined the call and 3 times accused us of misusing funds to the broker. And then we said, prove it. We already gave you every bank statement we've ever had. Find $1 of misuse. And they said it's been decided, it's final.
Wow. Gentlemen.
And yet, they tell me, the senator, that, oh, we're for him. We want him to succeed. Does that sound like they want him to succeed?
Well, Senator, I'm so confused because this is a man offering to build 10 to 12 plants in North Dakota that are obviously going to be producing world-class, world-grade equipment. Going to be paying people well in a region that, quite frankly, eats dust. Dunseith is not exactly a hotbed of opportunity. He's come in good faith. And I can't imagine anybody who's been, quite frankly, crapped on more than Charles. And for a state that says it's so business friendly and everything else, I'm disgust. Disgust is the tip of the iceberg that I'm feeling, and I know you are too, Senator. Gentlemen, I've managed to take a little over an hour of your time. This is the tip of the iceberg. I know that Charles, somebody national is hopefully going to be taking this up and carrying this forth. Thank you for letting us break this. But I'm going to go to Charles first and then you, Senator. Charles, no, I'm going to do that in reverse. Senator, what would you like to say as an ending statement? And then I'm going to go to Charles for an ending statement. Senator, what would you like to say to the people of North Dakota regarding this?
Well, I want to get to the truth, and I want people to have, open eyes to understand that our state maybe isn't as squeaky clean as we think. and I really want to get to the bottom of this. I'd like to have national news pick it up and put pressure on.
I agree totally. Charles.
Jay Spieler, encourage Burgum to do the right thing, please. You met with me a month ago. You met with me with Senator Weston, with other witnesses. You haven't taken Senator Weston's follow-up. You haven't replied to my follow-up. You wanted to know if we had the evidence. We showed you some of it. We had witnesses confirm it. You know that there's a mess that needs to be fixed. You have not replied when we've offered to send you the evidence of BCI acting against us in violation of our civil rights. You have not followed up when we offered to send you the evidence, which we know you already have, relating to commerce communications with us. We're happy to still do that if you need additional layers of confirmation that we're telling the truth in every possible way. The state needs to fix this so that our family, our business, and the communities up here can move forward creating jobs. And if you're not willing to fix it, then either Representative Armstrong or independent candidate Coachman or Democratic candidate Senator Merrill Pepcorn, I hope one of you has a plan to step in and make this right. I am trying to give people gracious ways out to continue to fix this while the chips fall where they may as far as the crimes go. But there are agents who've targeted us. There are crimes that need to be investigated. There are people who need to be charged, and we need help.
Thank you, Charles. Everybody, I would like you to understand that this is the tip of the iceberg. We will be having Charles on, possibly Senator Weston. I'd like to thank them both for being very brave people and willing to come forward in this. And there's a question on my board that says, where's the news? Well, everybody, you're getting the news from Grand Forks' best source because everybody else, including our lovely local media, will do nothing but carry water for our local politicians because whatever they're fed by the spoon from the government, they will be happy to repeat. There are still those of us out here who like to do research and who do like to have the truth out so that people can make their own decisions, and that would be Grand Forks' best source. Gentlemen, I will be back in touch. We have more to do this in the coming days. As always, God bless, and please, both of you gentlemen, take care.